TV production for this program was provided by Capstone Productions, Inc. and EPHistory.com, the website for TV documentaries on DVD and information about our webcast and radio broadcasts about El Paso history and heritage. Thank you for watching.
First of all, on behalf of El Paso and West Texas, we would like to thank everybody for being here. For the folks that traveled from Pennsylvania and from East Texas, Fort Worth and Dallas. It's an honor to be here before you folks and commemorate this event that took place just a couple days more than 60 years ago. And what a wonderful turnout. I learned how to pronounce an Italian name. Taliaferro, yes. So we do really appreciate, and I'm humbled by meeting all you folks and the wonderful personalities and people that are here. To begin the program, would you please stand for a moment and remain standing? We're going to present the colors. The Sargent Majors Academy Color Guard will bring the flags up. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, a moment of silence, and then we'll begin the program. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just take a moment of silence, please, in commemoration of the 9 gentlemen. Okay, thank you. Please be seated. Before we get started, I just wanted to introduce a couple of folks that played a major role in this. We have Gary Williams in the back, who works for the Community Foundation, and we have to thank the Community Foundation for this wonderful facility, allowing us to use it this morning. We also have County Commissioner Pat Ablin, who's here. Pat showed up to share with us. Pat used to be the head man over at the airport, so he has an intimate knowledge of aircraft, airports, and so on, and we're privileged to have him here with us. And let's see, who else do we have out here that we need? Oh, John Hamilton. Where's John? John heads up the history of the society out there at Fort Bliss, so we really appreciate him being here also. The first gentleman I would like to invite up here to speak to us is Major General retired James Mahoney. And this gentleman was in charge of Fort Bliss at one time, and when I've got to say this because when I asked him if he would present today, and he said yes, he said, in fact, I was working as a bartender when this event took place. I could not believe that he was mature enough to have been working, is that a polite way of saying old enough? Mature enough to have been working as a bartender in 1953, but General, would you please?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a pleasure to speak to you, and it's truly an honor and a surprise to me to see so many family members who were involved with the wonderful crew of the aircraft that crashed here just over 60 years ago. Bernie Sargent asked me to provide comments concerning the strategic environment that existed during the lifetime of the B-36 bomber, known very appropriately as the Peacemaker. Following my remarks, Terry Sunday will describe the Peacemaker's development and truly unique characteristics and capabilities. The presidential decision to build the Peacemaker was made in April of 1941. World War II was underway between England and Germany. The Germans were heavily bombing England, and the Battle of Britain was in progress. The Japanese attack at Pearl Harbor had not yet occurred, so we were not at war as yet with the Axis powers. At this moment in time, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt wisely approved the B-36 development based on a worst-case premise that England might not be available as a base for U.S. aircraft in the impending war. And then we would need a long-range intercontinental bomber capable of operating from the United States. After 4 long years, World War II ended in Allied victory in Europe in May and Japan in August of 1945. We had dropped 2 nuclear bombs to destroy the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The concept of warfare would never be the same again. Strategic bombing had risen to overwhelming military importance. The United States completed World War II and exited as the world's greatest superpower, and we were the sole owner of the bomb. In March of 1946, less than a year after the end of the war, President Harry Truman introduced former Prime Minister of England, Sir Winston Churchill, to a distinguished audience at Westminster College at Fulton, Missouri. Among other thoughts in what was to become a very famous speech by Winston Churchill, he said, quote, "From Stettin in the Adriatic to Trieste in the Baltic, an iron curtain has descended across the continent," close quote. Clearly, the Soviet Union had demonstrated to the world that it was setting itself and its vassal states, the ancient states of Central and Eastern Europe, apart from and in competition with the Western world. Churchill, in his history-making speech, also mentioned the atomic bomb, saying, well in advance of the Soviets' possession of such a bomb, that as time went on, quote, "we should still possess so formidable a superiority as to impose effective deterrence upon it," and he meant the nuclear bombs, "employment or threat of employment by others," close quote. This was an early statement of the threat of employment by others. We would add to this later in our nation by pledging never to commit a nuclear first strike. And this was to become the strategy of massive retaliation, which so much depended on the B-36. Under Presidents Truman and Eisenhower, that kind of system was adopted by our country as our goal, to have the capability for massive retaliation. We in the West watched as the Soviets strengthened many aspects of their armed forces. We took careful notice of Soviet actions, but continued to dismantle much of our World War II military capability. But in March of 1946, the same month as Churchill's talk, we created the Strategic Air Command within the Air Force to manage the overall use of air-delivered nuclear weapons. Strategic Air Command, or SAC as it was known, was to develop a powerful strategic force comprising highly trained and motivated airmen and the best aircraft that America could produce. Our force was required to accept and absorb a first strike in any nuclear war, and then deliver such massive retaliation that any aggressor would hesitate to launch an attack against our homeland. Part of the fleet had to be able to launch sizable strike forces from our North American bases. One aircraft, the B-36, would provide this capability. In August 1947, the first operational B-36 was turned over to the Air Force. For the first time, Strategic Air Command had an aircraft that could fly round trip from the US to the heartland of the Soviet Union, deliver huge nuclear or thermonuclear or conventional payloads, and return. In August 1949, the Soviets detonated their first atomic device. Then they moved quickly to deploy nuclear weapons and to improve them. The arms race continued. The stakes were higher than ever before in history. The Cold War was underway, and for many years our nation would observe and respond as the Soviets bolstered their conventional and nuclear-capable forces. During some of those years, B-36 aircraft carrying nuclear weapons were airborne around the clock to ensure that we will have survival of our retaliatory capability. In June of 1950, the Korean War began. NATO forces were arrayed against the North Koreans and later against Chinese ground forces as well as Soviet aircraft and pilots. That was to be a conventional war. However, as it progressed, we considered and rejected the use of nuclear weapons. In November of 1952, the United States successfully tested a thermonuclear device of far greater destructive power than fission weapons that had preceded it. Follow-on tests predicted that a 25,000-pound thermonuclear bomb could have a 60 megaton yield. That is 3,000 times the energy that was unleashed by the World War II atomic bombs. Also in 1952, we laid the keel of the first nuclear missile submarine. In a few years, this class of submarine would become a new nuclear deterrent alongside the B-36 bombers. In January of 1953, Dwight D. Eisenhower became president. He too espoused the massive retaliation theory of warfare. In 1953, the Korean War ended with an armistice. In August of '53, the Soviets tested a thermonuclear weapon. In August of 1954, the last of 385 B-36s came off the assembly line. In 1958 and 59, the B-36 left the Air Force after 10 years of service, replaced by the all-jet B-52 that remains on duty today. As nuclear and thermonuclear weapons were made smaller and smaller, it became feasible to put these weapons on guided missiles. Our first intercontinental ballistic missile, the Atlas, was fielded in 1959, with Titan and Minuteman to follow. Today, Minuteman ICBMs remain on duty, capable of reaching the Russian heartland from hardened silos in the United States. And a series of manned aircraft, the B-52, the B-1B and B-2 bombers, as well as several longer-range tactical aircraft, can carry today's smaller nuclear bombs and air-launched cruise missiles to strategic targets. Trident ballistic missiles are carried by submarines on patrol. Tensions are lowered from where they were during the Cold War. Therefore, a smaller triad of ICBMs, bombers, and submarine-based missiles remain on duty, defending our country today. Massive retaliation was and is America's successful operational concept. The readiness of our men and their weapons kept us from nuclear war. And fortunately, men such as those we eulogize today, flying a great bombing aircraft named the B36 Peacemaker, were available when they were needed to fill a singular, strategically imperative role in the defense of our nation. We thank them, we thank those who have followed them, and we thank those who man the ramparts of freedom today. Thank you for your attention. I'll be followed by Terry Sunday, who will provide further details on the B-36. Thank you. Thanks.
I think the general took my notes. Never argue with a general.
I'm checking just to make sure. You know, I got up once to give a speech after a dinner. I put my notes on the podium, and I went up and they were gone. And I asked, and nobody fessed up to having moved them. And so I probably gave one of the better speeches of my life. But it was a shock.
That's okay. It was just the Terry Sunday's bio, so I'll just make something up. No? Oh. Shh. We had a pretty dedicated team putting this together, of which Terry Sunday was one of the members, and did extensive research into the mechanics of the B-36, which I found fascinating. And I just want to throw something out there. This is a live broadcast online right now. We also will have this available through Capstone Productions. And if y'all, any of the family members or any of the visitors would like copies of it, make sure you give me your email address and we'll provide that information. And also there's a gentleman in the audience named David Etzold. Where's David at? Right here. He has amassed tremendous amounts of information on this event before, during, and after. And if you have any questions about the site itself, talk to David because he knows it backwards and forwards. Carl, also, you wanted to mention that Carl is going to be leading a hike up there tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Is that what time? Yeah, come on up.
Yes, I'm Carl Putnam. I'm a member of the committee. I'm very pleased to see all the Tollivers here. It's so hard to believe that the result of one email that I sent in the past has resulted in this tremendous turnout. The hike is not officially part of this gathering, but if you would like to go on the hike, I will be leading a hike tomorrow at 7 o'clock in the morning. It will depart from the plaque that we're about to go to. It is a rigorous hike. It will last about 5 hours. You should not attempt this hike unless you are in good physical condition. It is mostly off trail on firm and loose rock and around cactus. It is suitable for in-shape children as young as about 10 years old. I will conduct this hike if I get at least one person to contact me and say, I want to go. You can bring any kind of reasonable shoes. You don't have to have hiking boots. Tennis shoes will work. You should bring 2 liters of water and dress in layers. It'll be cold at first and it'll warm up a little bit later. So you know who I am. Contact me. If I get one person who says they want to go, it's a go. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Appreciate that much. Terry earned a bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering from the University of Pittsburgh and an MBA in Florida Institute of Technology. As an engineer and manager in the aerospace industry, he worked with Sprint anti-ballistic missile, the Copperhead guided projectile, the Patriot missile, the Project 1005 satellite interceptor, and on a still classified advanced satellite program. And if he tells you about it, we'll have to shoot you. After he retired from Lockheed Martin in 2002, he was the Director of Development at the War Eagles Museum for 10 years. Terry's written dozens of articles on spaceflight, military technology, and aviation. His specialty is experimental aircraft of the Cold War, and a very important part of our team putting this together. Terry? Wanted to go to the other one.
No, we just want to step through the pictures at the end.
Okay, we can do that.
Thank you, Bernie, and thank you everyone for showing up. This is a great turnout. I have a few remarks here. Almost exactly 110 years ago, on December 17th, 1903, Orville and Wilbur Wright, bicycle makers from Dayton, Ohio, made history's first controlled, successful flight of a powered aircraft. With Orville at the controls, their primitive machine took to the air over the windswept sand dunes of Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. The distance Orville flew on his first flight that day, he actually made 4 flights that day, but the first flight he made, the distance was 120 feet, just a little more than half of the wingspan of the B-36 bomber. General Maloney described for you the way the United States and the Soviet Union faced off against each other in the Cold War, and how each side in that stalemate developed new weapons that could destroy the other many times over. Now I'll give you a few more details about one short but important span of time during the Cold War, and about the weapon that defined it more than any other, the B-36. As the biggest operational aircraft ever used by any nation in the world, the B-36 is perhaps the Cold War's most enduring aviation icon. When the B-36 was in service in the 1950s, all-out nuclear war between the US and the Soviet Union seemed very likely, if not inevitable. For a brief but volatile period of high global tensions, B-36 bombers were America's only deterrent against Soviet aggression. People living near bases from which B-36s flew, including Biggs Field here in El Paso, came to recognize the unique, low-pitched, throbbing beat of the bomber's 6 powerful piston engines as the sound of the Air Force on alert. There are reports that the sound of the B-36 could rattle windows on the ground from an altitude of 30,000 feet. The story of how the B-36 came to be is long and complicated. To understand it, we need to take a closer look at the first conflict in which bomber aircraft played a major role, World War II. Imagine the world in 1941. The armies of Germany, Italy, and Japan had run roughshod over Europe, North Africa, and much of Asia, conquering nation after nation in a seemingly endless string of military victories. Germany's Luftwaffe ruled the skies over continental Europe. Even though the Luftwaffe failed to defeat the Royal Air Force in the Battle of Britain, which thwarted Adolf Hitler's planned invasion, Luftwaffe fighters posed a huge threat for any bombers that the RAF might send over to attack Germany. England gained a breather when Hitler shifted his territorial ambitions eastward and invaded the vast open spaces of the Soviet Union. But on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, most U.S. military planners expected that America would one day enter the war. They also knew that Hitler might one day successfully invade, and occupy England. This meant that the U.S. Army Air Corps had to face the prospect of flying bombing missions against Germany from air bases in the continental United States. To gain that capability, the Air Corps, in April 1941, issued a specification for a new bomber that would be able to carry a huge load of bombs for a distance of 10,000 miles. That was about 5 times the range of any other bomber then in existence. With the ability to fly nonstop and unrefueled from bases on the U.S. mainland to Europe and back, the aircraft that the Air Corps wanted to buy was nothing less than the world's first true intercontinental bomber. Only 2 companies answered the Air Corps' request, Boeing and Consolidated. Consolidated changed its name to Convair in 1943, which is why the B-36 is always called a Convair airplane rather than Consolidated. Same company. The Air Corps chose Consolidated's design, and in April 1941, awarded the company a development contract for an aircraft that it designated the XB-36. So again, as General Maloney also said, October 1941, before the U.S. even entered World War II, the B-36 was under contract. The X in the designation XB-36 stood for experimental, which was normally used for the first hand-built example of a new aircraft. Thus, the original version of the B-36 was in development 2 months before the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, brought the United States into the war. Pearl Harbor changed everything. With America forced into a 2-front war, military planners came up with a strategy to concentrate on defeating Germany and Italy in Europe while fighting a delaying action against Japan in the Pacific. Hitler's armies had bogged down in the Eastern Front, so England at the time seemed relatively safe from German occupation, unlike the situation a year earlier when the planners feared that Germany would occupy England. So with Britain's air bases secure, Air Corps and Royal Air Force bombers could use them to launch attacks on Germany. They did so with a vengeance. Many raids later in the war involved more than 1,000 aircraft on a single raid. Given the improved situation in Europe, and with the island-hopping strategy going on in the Pacific that was designed to seize island airfields closer and closer to Japan, the Air Corps didn't really need a massive long-range aircraft like the B-36. Instead, it needed lots of smaller bombers like Boeing's B-17 Flying Fortress and Consolidated's B-24 Liberator, and it needed them in a big hurry. So the Air Corps ordered Consolidated to slow down its work on the B-36 and instead to crank out as many B-24s as it could. By August 1942, when Consolidated's B-36 mock-up was ready for Air Corps approval, the project had little military or political support. America had mobilized its industrial might to produce thousands of smaller aircraft of all types, along with tanks, ships, guns, ammunition, and other war materiel. Numbers mattered more than size, and the B-36 had just been designed for a worst-case scenario anyway. That scenario didn't come to pass. The fortunes of the B-36 ebbed and flowed during the war, but the one constant was that it was not needed for its original mission of bombing European targets from bases in the continental United States. However, even though the need for an extremely long-range bomber went away before World War II ended, the Air Corps nevertheless placed an order for 100 production B-36s in 1944. After the war ended, the service cut back its aircraft purchases drastically. It canceled orders for about 17,000 aircraft. But the B-36 contract survived. The reason is because many military strategists suspected that America would soon face the Soviet Union as a new adversary, and they felt the big bomber would be a vital weapon in that conflict. They were proven right. The Berlin blockade in 1948 was one of several Soviet provocations in the early days of the Cold War that stoked fears about the intention of America's ex-ally and helped keep the B-36 program alive, even when there were some calls to cancel it, mainly due to its cost. Thus, the World War II-era bomber that never performed the mission for which it was designed morphed into the first, and for a while, the only aircraft that could credibly threaten America's newest enemy. There was another reason why the B-36 survived the post-war cutbacks. The atomic bombings of the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945 did more than just end World War II. They also kicked off a nuclear arms race between America and the Soviet Union. Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin demanded his scientists develop an atomic bomb. Thanks to several spies inside the American bomb project, the Soviets did so in 1949 by building a carbon copy of the bomb the U.S. had dropped on Nagasaki. Both nations then began feverishly to upgrade their nuclear weapons and stockpile them in a mad race for military superiority that lasted for the next 50 years. Scientists on both sides of the Iron Curtain knew that the first relatively primitive atomic bombs were only the first step on the road to a new weapon of almost unimaginable destructive power, the hydrogen or H-bomb. The U.S. tested the world's first H-bomb in 1952. It had an explosive power equivalent to 10.4 million tons of TNT, which was more than 450 times greater than the Nagasaki bomb. Unlike A-bombs, H-bombs could be scaled up in size almost without limit, so it was pretty easy to make huge H-bombs. But the H-bombs of the time were big and heavy. America's first operational H-bomb, the Mark 17, was 5 feet in diameter, 25 feet long, and weighed 21 tons. That is close to the weight of a fully combat-loaded B-17 during World War II, just the weight of the bomb. There was only one aircraft in the U.S. Air Force inventory that could carry it, and that was the B-36. So thus, the B-36, a bomber designed for an entirely different mission, was in the right place at the right time to become America's most important airborne deterrent against Soviet aggression and expansionism during the early days of the Cold War. The first B-36 flew in August 1946. Teething problems and constant design changes delayed its entry into service until about 1949. 385 of them eventually went into service with the Strategic Air Command, or SAC. Operational squadrons were based in California, Maine, New Mexico, South Dakota, Texas, Washington, and Puerto Rico. SAC B-36 crews flew training missions constantly. Some of their missions involved almost 2 days in the air nonstop and without refueling. Aerial refueling technology did not exist at that time. I think the longest mission on record was about 45 hours in the air the whole time without stopping. That's pretty amazing. No plane at that time could match it, and none today can either, without aerial refueling. Thanks to the efforts of SAC's commander, hard-driving General Curtis E. LeMay, B-36 crews were among the best, most highly trained and dedicated airmen who ever served in the U.S. Air Force. Here are a few statistics about the B-36. With a length of 162 feet, a wingspan of 230 feet, and a maximum takeoff weight of more than 400,000 pounds, it was the largest piston-engined aircraft ever produced. Much of its structure was made from magnesium, a very strong, lightweight metal, which gave the B-36 one of its nicknames, Magnesium Overcast. Its normal crew complement was 15 men. It could carry more than 10 times the bomb load of the B-17 Flying Fortress. It was powered by 6 28-cylinder piston engines that developed more than 3,000 horsepower each. Imagine the job it was to change the 336 spark plugs on one of those aircraft. Later models had 4 jet engines mounted in pods under the wing for a total of 10 engines. I don't think there's been an airplane since then that has had that many engines, and certainly not a mix of pistons and jets. The jets were used only for takeoff and for maximum speed flight. When all the engines were running, the crews called it 6 turnin' and 4 burnin'. The B-36's top speed was more than 400 miles per hour, and it could cruise at an altitude of more than 45,000 feet, which was above the reach of Soviet interceptor aircraft and the anti-aircraft artillery weapons of the day. It was a hugely impressive aircraft by any standards and remains so today. As a subsonic piston-powered aircraft in a dawning era of supersonic jets, the B-36 was already obsolete by the time it entered service. Even so, it was extremely effective throughout its brief career. B-36s bought the Air Force valuable time to bring newer, better, more modern weapons systems online to deter Soviet aggression in the darkest days of the Cold War. One of the aircraft that replaced the B-36 as SAC's airborne deterrent was Boeing's B-52 Stratofortress, which is still a first-line bomber today, more than 60 years after it first flew, and it is expected to remain in service until the 2040s. So that'll be almost 100 years of service for one aircraft. That's amazing. Today, only 4 B-36s exist. All are on display in museums. In 10 years of service with the Air Force, no B-36 ever fired a shot or dropped a bomb in anger. There was no need. The mere presence in the skies of the huge intercontinental bomber was a constant reminder to friend and foe alike of America's irresistible military power and willingness to use it if necessary. The stately, majestic B-36 played a key role in preventing the Cold War from turning hot and truly lived up to its name, Peacemaker. Are there any questions? I would like to show just a few pictures of the B-36 then, just so you can get some idea of the size of this aircraft. I mean, it was just enormous. Okay, here's 4 airplanes. There's a C-47 in the background, the B-29, which was used in World War II, the laser. Stand by. B-17, this was one of the main bombing aircraft in World War II, and of course here's the B-36, so you can get some idea of how much bigger it was than these other aircraft. Okay. Okay, back one, please. Up, your other back. One more. Okay, now start forward. Okay, here's some World War I era aircraft. This one is between the wars in the 1930s. Here's the B-17, the B-29, and all to scale, the B-36. So again, a huge aircraft. And this is just another shot that shows it compared to the B-29, which in its day was considered a big aircraft, but the B-36 pretty much dwarfed it. This is the takeoff of the first prototype, and the thing to look at here is look at the size of the wheels, okay? The next slide shows that wheel, and the tires were so big that there were only 3 airfields in the country that the B-36 could operate from because it put so much weight on the runway. So after that first design, it was changed to 4 tires on each of the main landing gear, which kind of spread the load out a little more. The B-36 was so big, this was taken at the Convair factory, and you can see how if the nose weren't tipped up on this fixture here, the tail would have hit the roof of the assembly building. I have no idea who all these people are. And the same thing held true for the SAC maintenance hangars. They tipped the nose up because the tail would not fit under the roof of the hangar. Here's just a lineup. There's more than 15 people here lined up in front of it, but that just gives you some idea of the number of people that were required to fly and operate the B-36. Now, the old Life magazine, they did a color series of photos on the B-36 back in the day, and some of these are just really striking photos. B-36 is almost never operated in pairs. I mean, they typically flew solo missions only. So this is an unusual picture in that it shows two of them pretty close together. The red tails that you saw, the red tails and wingtips, they were painted that way because they operated out of Alaska, and so they were painted red for better visibility against the snow and ice background. As I mentioned, the later models had jet engines added. So in addition to the 6 piston engines, here's 3 on one wing, okay? The later models had jet pods added underneath each wing to give a total of 10 engines. And just some really beautiful in-flight photography here. And to give you some final idea of the size of the B-36, this is the building we are in. Okay, right here. And if you were to look out this window at the square, this is to scale. This is to scale how the B-36, if you could get one in there, how it would fill the square. So just hopefully to convey some idea of the enormous size of this aircraft. Okay, thank you.
I have one question.
Yes?
In relation to other aircraft, is the wingspan of the B-36 the largest wingspan of any aircraft then or today? Do you know that?
I'm not aware of any that is bigger than that. Like the B-2, for example, it's down in the 170-foot region, that, you know, America's bomber now. Not sure about the C-5A series, or C-5B. It might be longer than that. I just don't have that information at my fingertips. But I mean, it's right up there. It was certainly the longest wingspan, the biggest plane of by any measure whatsoever of its day. Yes, Susie?
How much fuel was it burning when it had 6 turning and 4 burning?
I have no earthly idea. You know, the jets were only, well, first of all, the jets were designed, they were designed to use the same fuel as the piston engines, okay, so they didn't have to carry 2 separate fuel systems. But the jets were only used for brief bursts of power, like over the target, if they want to make a high-speed run over the target, sometimes for takeoff. So with the jets, and you saw at the beginning, at the front of the jet engine pods, there were doors that closed to minimize the drag when the jets weren't running. You know, the plane could carry enough fuel to run on the piston engines for 2 days.
Where are the 4 remaining at? Were they located?
I knew somebody was going to ask that. I think there's one at Castle in Texas, or in California. There's one at the SAC Museum at Offutt Air Force Base in, I'm not sure what state, Omaha.
There's one at Wright Pat.
Wright Pat, of course. Wright Pat, okay. Anybody know where the fourth is? Okay, the one at Pima was originally being restored in Fort Worth, and I think they moved it out to Pima, and that's where it is now. So that's where the 4 are. If you ever get a chance to see them, they're tremendously impressive.
The B-36 at Pima has the crew entrance ladder off the B-36 that crashed at Goose Bay, Labrador, because I brought it back.
No kidding.
On the B-36
Wow.
Did the plane, this one that crashed, did it have the jet engines also, or was it just, it had?
Yes, it was a D model, so it had the jets. There's still 1 jet engine at the site. Okay, thank you.
I would be remiss if I didn't thank the Texas Parks and Wildlife folks, Cesar, back here for bringing the artifacts along with them this morning. And this particular site falls within the Texas Parks and Wildlife purview. One of the largest parks in the state of Texas, and it's within the city of El Paso. Thank you, Cesar, for bringing those from the Weiler tram. I mentioned we have a lot of family members here, and I know that Dewey mentioned he would like to say a few words, so if we could invite Dewey up here.
Hi, I'm Dewey Taliaferro. I'm a grandson, one of 4 grandsons and 3 granddaughters of, a little emotional, sorry. I'm emotional because this is a dream for my family. And it's a dream come true. So just to come out here and see a piece of the puzzle of our history, our family history. We're a very close family. As you can see, there's a lot of us, and we stick together. So, and it has a lot to do with this crash. So this event and this memory of these men is very special to us, and all I can really say is thank you. Thank you for doing this. So.
The El Paso County Historical Commission is responsible for assembling the verbiage and purchasing these plaques. And we've got well over 200 in the county of El Paso. And of all of the markers that we have placed, this one has become the most emotional for all of us and the one that we've had closest to our heart. It's just a tremendous pleasure to be able to do this for you folks, for you family members today. It's a real honor. It really is. Any other family members like to? Yes, ma'am. Oh, sure. Come on up.
Good morning. My name is Obie Morford, and I'm speaking on behalf of the family of U.S. Air Force Major George C. Morford. We've made this journey from Verona, Pennsylvania, our hometown, and the birthplace of Major Morford. We are here not to mourn the deaths of these 9 brave U.S. airmen, but to celebrate their lives and to honor them and to thank them for their service to our country. Excuse me, I'm sorry. We will be forever grateful to them for making the ultimate sacrifice in preserving our freedom and the security of our homeland, the United States of America, just as many other brave servicemen and women have done before and after them. The Morford family would like to express their heartfelt thanks and gratitude to these 9 fallen crewmen. I salute you, and may God bless you as He watches over your families at this very memorable occasion. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. When we'll have a couple, excuse me, of shuttle buses that will be taking everybody up to the site where the marker is. A very good friend of ours who has made many a trip up the mountain will have a few words to say about her commitment to this event. Now she speaks very broken English, so she has translation for us, but she'll share that with us when we get up there. And I look forward to hearing it. I look forward to seeing all you folks up there. Now, if we could stand, please, we're going to retire the flags, the colors. And thank you all, and God bless you all for being here. like to thank the Sergeant Major's Academy Color Guard for sharing their time with us this morning at this very special event. And once again, thank you everybody for being here. And we'll see you at the marker.
It's a great privilege to know that I'm standing in front of families of those who lost loved ones on December 11, 1953. And history here in the Franklin Mountains remains of the tragedy, which was a sad story that I became aware of over half a century ago. Honestly, I could not hold my tears as I walked through the ashes. The airplane debris is still among the stones on the mountain. It has been 60 years since this accident where a member of your families was lost. My sincere condolences to you, as I cannot imagine the pain in your hearts despite the time. The absence left in your lives can never be filled with anyone or anything. The loss of a family never can be replaced. It is true that they lost their lives in this tragic accident, but they really live on and since and will always be in your hearts and in mine. They already have a place close to God, and now 60 years later we are gathered here to pay tribute to and remember that they are heroes. I hope this is not the only time a tribute in their honor is held, because they were heroes who fought for the freedom of this nation, of this great country today. Just as they already have a place in heaven here on earth, they already have a place in the history of our nation. They deserve to be remembered now and forever. They are great heroes. Rest in peace. Sincerely, Luz West, El Paso, Texas. Thank you. Now, we had a third person to talk a little bit to us today, but we were running really long in the room, so I want to ask William McWhorter, who is from Austin, from the Texas State Historical Commission, to say a few words for us. He came up on other business and decided this was important enough that he had to stay.
Thanks, Marty.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
And if you watch Duck Dynasty?
And my name's Willie, too. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. I've had the opportunity to work several times in the past with the El Paso County Historical Commission, the El Paso Community Foundation, Fort Bliss, and other groups on different types of topics. I'm part of the Texas Historical Commission. We're a state agency, just like our colleagues with Texas Parks and Wildlife have been doing a great job with helping preserve the history of this crash site. I had prepared remarks that are much better heard but behind a podium, so I'm just going to speak off the cuff for a second and say that I'm really happy to see from the individuals privately, from the group organizations at the city, county, and state level, so many people that are interested in not only remembering this crash site with all the things that went on in the decades-long Cold War conflict, but remembering the family members as well that are with us here today. I can't speak as eloquently as the family members who got up before us all, talked about the individuals who died in that crash, but I want you to know that their service during peacetime is remembered by not just you, but people that you've never met before. And you can see that by all these people that are here today. Thank you, Bernie Sargent, the El Paso County Historical Commission. Thank you to Gary Williams and the El Paso Community Foundation, and to many others I'm sure I'm forgetting to say right now. Now let's unveil a marker. What do you say?
Okay, if I could have some representatives of the families that are here. I squeeze past you real quick.
Thanks.
Okay. Pull on. Go ahead. On the ridge in front of you, you see at 2:27 p.m. on December 11, 1953, United States Air Force Strategic Air Command B36D bomber crashed while its pilot was attempting to land at Biggs Air Force Base in a snowstorm. All 9 crew members aboard the aircraft perished. The investigation found that confusion between the ground controllers and the aircraft led the pilot to believe he was east of the Franklins when he turned into the mountain. But tragically, the aircraft was west of the mountains and he flew right into the ridge 300 feet below the crest. Consolidated Vultee Convair B36 Peacemaker was the largest bomber ever used. Its wingspan was almost twice the distance of Orville Wright's first successful flight in 1903. Powered by 6 piston engines and 4 turbojets, Peacemaker served in SAC from 1948 until 1959. They were part of America's nuclear deterrent force against the Soviet Union, helping to check the spread of communism while never dropping a bomb or firing a shot in anger. The B-36D that crashed was being transferred to Biggs from Carswell Air Force Base in Fort Worth, Texas. Like all SAC bomb crews, the 9 men aboard on its last flight were a cross-section of America. They gave their lives while doing the job that they were trained to do, protecting the peace. Crew members Carrie Fant, First Lieutenant from Linden, Texas, Royal Freeman, Master Sergeant from Dallas, Texas, Herman Garrick, Lieutenant Colonel, Fort Worth, Texas, James Harvey, Airman First Lieutenant, Mineola, Texas, Edwin Howe, Airman First Class, Jordan, New York, Douglas Minor, Major, Attleboro, Massachusetts, George Morford, Major, Verona, Pennsylvania, Frank Silvestri, Airman Second Class, Baltimore, Maryland, and Dewey Taliaferro, First Sergeant, Fort Worth, Texas.
TV production for this program was provided by Capstone Productions, Inc. and EPHistory.com, the website for TV documentaries on DVD and information about our webcast and radio broadcasts about El Paso history and heritage. Thank you for watching.